Good morning to you. We were hoping for a flurry of activity, so much still unanswered. And at the top of that list, Corbin Burnes. Is there any momentum, any which way? What do you think?
Lauren, good morning. Corbin Burnes, to my knowledge, is not here in this thinning lobby, and yet there is still a lot of conversation about where he may sign in the days ahead. Credit to our colleague Jon Heyman for reporting that both the Giants and the Blue Jays have spoken with Burnes and his representatives in recent days. So certainly the Blue Jays and Giants among the finalists, we could say, for Corbin Burnes. Alex Spear in the Boston Globe saying that the Red Sox still have interest in Corbin Burnes even after acquiring Garrett Crochet from the Chicago White Sox this week. So after Max Fried goes to the Bronx, Lauren, all the attention now at the top of the market is on Corbin Burnes, and because of the money that went to Max Fried, pitchers like Sean Manaea, Walker Buehler, Jack Flaherty will all be handsomely rewarded in this marketplace as well.
You said Boston, and I was thinking what a different mentality for Boston this winter than last year, I guess. The Red Sox only interested in arms, or is there more? What are you hearing from them?
Well, Lauren, they are one of the most talked about teams in baseball this week. And so even after the Crochet move, as we talked about with Alex's report, I was also told that they have been speaking with the Seattle Mariners about trading for another high-end arm, potentially Luis Castillo, to augment this group of starting pitchers for the Boston Red Sox. They have been candid, Lauren, in saying that they're not done yet adding to this group. And we know the Seattle Mariners are willing to listen, especially on Castillo, because he's got the highest salary of anyone in that rotation, to move Castillo for offense and also the possibility of signing additional bats on the free agent market. So it wouldn't necessarily just be Castillo for a bat like Tristan Casas, for example, but it would be Castillo for Casas and the additional payroll flexibility to potentially add one more free agent bat. The Mariners are also expected to make a strong pitch for Roki Sasaki that, according to Adam Jude in the Seattle Times, will include, Lauren, a personal appeal from Ichiro Suzuki, the pending Hall of Famer himself. So if you're Roki Sasaki and Ichiro, number 51, is making the sales pitch, you're certainly going to listen to that.
I would imagine that call would be very, very interesting. Wow. Okay, you know what it's like, this part of the country, when you hear a name. Yankee fans hear Kyle Tucker, and then they just run with it, and it's all they can talk about. How likely, we had Brian Cashman, JP, on the show yesterday, how likely a partnership here?
Fake news.
Is it fake news? Is it true?
Lauren, it
fake?
is. No, Harold. To Harold, to the soundboard, this is not fake news. At least the conversations, Harold, are not fake news. And two teams to watch here. It's not just the Yankees. The Cubs are a strong suitor as well for Kyle Tucker. And Harold might be surprised to learn this bit of perspective, but there was a team that traded a pending free agent to the Yankees a year ago, that being the Padres and Juan Soto, and the Padres still went on to make the postseason and really challenged the Dodgers. So it is interesting, Harold, because when you consider the different possibilities, and I'll talk about the Cubs for a second, if Tucker goes to the Cubs, perhaps if the Cubs would move someone like an Isaac Paredes, someone like a Seiya Suzuki, some right-now talent. And don't forget, Lauren, one of the other pieces of this equation could be if the Cubs get Kyle Tucker, are they then more apt to trade a Cody Bellinger to the Yankees? So a lot of different impacts here, one certainly influencing the other.
If I was a writer, I'd be dangerous.
Matt's bored with this segment, can you tell? That's when you know. When the uptick in soundboard happens, can you confirm or deny? Matt, you want to do this segment or no?
I don't know what you're talking about. Continue the interview, Lauren, please. Harold just jumps in every once in a while.
Harold's unruly, really. JP.
Harold's not even in the building.
JP, you spend your winter hosting the Cooperstown podcast. When you leave the winter meetings, you're going to have an episode or two. What can we look forward to, viewers?
Lauren, the road to Cooperstown never stops. And by the way, congratulations to the great Tom Hamilton. What a beautiful interview that was with Tom. Was one of the all-time greats in our business. Yes, he truly is. Our guest this week that we're spotlighting, Ferguson Jenkins of Chatham, Ontario. He was the first Canadian-born inductee as a player to the Baseball Hall of Fame. And I love how much a part of our podcast conversation and also his speech was talking about his father, Ferguson Jenkins Sr. And Ferguson Jenkins Sr. was one of the leading black baseball players in Chatham, Ontario, and in southwestern Ontario in general during those years in the early part of the 20th century. And here's what Ferguson Jenkins told me about the impact his father had on his baseball journey.
How much did your dad's inspiration as a young ball player himself once upon a time, how did that help drive you and inspire you during those years?
Well, I knew my dad played barnstormed in the Negro League in Canada and barnstormed through Ohio and Pennsylvania and Michigan. And he was a pretty good ball player. He was a center fielder. And he would inspire me from time to time when I'd phone home and tell him I'd won a ball game, I performed well. And I'd talk to my mom. My mom never got an opportunity to see me play because she got glaucoma early in her 20s. And my dad came to Chatham in 1937 or 38, met my mom. They got married in 1940, and I was born in 1942. And he would give me that little pep talk from time to time, along with Gene. And I talked to Gene a lot of times when I'd be home. Pitching, basically I was a new individual pitching in A, double A, and triple A. So it was a transition of basically learning how to win. And my dad would always tell me, things are going to change. You're not going to lose. Team's going to play well. You're going to win ball games. And it happened in that order. I lost a few games early, and then I started to win.
I love history.
What a story from Ferguson Jenkins. He told me the story as well, Lauren, about how a seminal moment in his baseball life was when his father, Ferguson Jenkins Sr., actually brought him to Detroit to watch the then Cleveland Indians and Larry Doby. Of course, Larry Doby broke the color barrier in the American League, and so for Ferguson Jenkins to see someone who looked like him on a major league field, he told me it made a tremendous impact on him. And by the way, Lauren, one last note on Ferguson Jenkins. His off-season job for a couple years in the major leagues, he'd already appeared with the Cubs, was already a star. His off-season job was playing for the Harlem Globetrotters. He played hoops in the offseason for one of the most entertaining teams in the world in any sport. So Ferguson Jenkins, he could play hockey as well back in the day in Chatham, a great all-around athlete and a tremendous gentleman as well.
Oh, what a conversation. Of all your gigs, JP, I know this one is very near and dear to your heart. Thank you so much for sharing, and thanks for all your work at the Winter Meetings.